Thank you. Turning now to Afghanistan, hundreds of Afghanis who helped Canada are finding it almost impossible to get on the list for flights to Canada. We're hearing from people who are being asked for documents that they don't have. They're being met by silence from federal officials. Immigration won't share lists of the people who qualify to leave the country with the veterans groups who are trying to help them leave. And time is running out. So what are you doing about this situation right now? And on Monday, you said that a flight from Canada would land once the airport is secure. Why hasn't that happened yet?
As I said, we just recently received 92, last night, 92 new refugees from Afghanistan who are right now being processed and settled in Canada, but there is much more to do. But let me be absolutely clear. The limiting factor on this is not paperwork or not connections with the Canadian government. The limiting factor on getting people out of Afghanistan right now is people being unable to get to the airport, people being unable to actually leave the country. And that is why, as a global community, we are all pushing so hard on the Taliban to ensure free access for Afghans to the airport. We need to be able to get people fleeing for their lives to safety, and that's why we are engaged on the ground in the airport. We have ability to process people. We just need people to be able to get to the airport, and right now the Taliban are preventing them from doing so, which is why we've seen a number of the planes airlifting people out have not been full. Because the Taliban is preventing people from getting to the airport. We're going to continue to push very hard alongside our international partners to get as many people out of Afghanistan as possible in short order. And on top of that, Canada has committed that we will be resettling over 20,000 refugees from Afghanistan in Canada because we know how important it is to do our part to support the people who fought for a better future for themselves in Afghanistan. Many of those people will have to come through third countries, will have to be able to get out of Afghanistan in the coming weeks and months, but we will continue to be there for them. And again, paperwork and formulas are not the impediment to getting people here. Je pense que c'est important de savoir que la documentation est importante. Il faut vérifier l'identité des gens, mais ce n'est pas les formulaires ou la paperasse qui bloquent les gens de quitter l'Afghanistan maintenant, c'est les talibans. Les talibans sont en train d'empêcher les gens de se rendre à l'aéroport où il y a des avions occidentaux qui sont là pour sortir les gens, sortir leurs citoyens, sortir leurs interprètes, comme le Canada est en train de faire. Mais les gens ne se rendent pas à l'aéroport, ne peuvent pas se rendre à l'aéroport. C'est pour ça que la communauté internationale est en train de travailler si fermement avec les talibans pour les pousser de permettre un libre accès à leurs citoyens à l'aéroport s'ils le veulent.
Prochaine question. Hi, Mr. Trudeau. Mercedes Stevenson, Global News. With respect to Afghanistan, you say that the documentation is not the issue or lack of information. I have dozens of messages on my phone I'd be happy to show to your staff from Canadian interpreters saying that they are getting no communication from the Canadian Embassy. They don't know when to go, where to go, what to do. Other countries are at least tweeting this information out. They're calling. They're saying now the Taliban is starting to go door to door at the safe houses they're at and executing people. They're terrified. They want to be able to come here. And you're promising 20,000 places. On that number, you've said that you will accept that many refugees, but the UK's Home Minister is saying that in a conversation with the Five Eyes last night, Canadian officials told her that number is aspirational. Can you clarify where that 20,000 number came from? How many of those are new places, other than the 45,000 you'd already created for people from all over the world, and how many new places will you create?
The number is actually 21,000 if we're being specific about our goal, because there are 6,000 special immigration measures individuals who have direct connections to Canada, and 15,000 more human rights activists, journalists, people who could be interested that we will have a category for. But we recognize that this is something that is hard to quantify exactly because there are so many barriers on the ground right now that the Taliban are putting into this situation. As you point out, the situation is fluid. It's extremely difficult. And there is a very real concern that identifying people, putting out lists, sending very specific tweets on certain factors could actually endanger people on the ground because the Taliban, of course, are using all the different ways they can to track down people who they see as problematic or as opponents or adversaries within the country. We have to be continuing to be extremely thoughtful and careful in how we support people, because our goal is to get as many people to safety in Canada as possible, and that is what we continue to work with our allies on in this. Canada was able to resettle close to 40,000 Syrian refugees in the first months after the election in 2015. That is very much what we are focused on as a government and as a party, once again, getting as many people out of Afghanistan to safety in Canada, where I know this country is filled with families and communities and organizations who would love nothing more than to welcome Afghan families fleeing for their lives, wanting to build a better future for themselves and their kids. La réalité, c'est que nous parlons de 20 000. Nous espérons en faire encore plus parce qu'on parle de 6 000 personnes qu'on identifiait comme ayant des liens direct ou indirect au Canada, et un autre 15 000 individus qui auraient un background qui mériterait d'être protégé, que ce soit des journalistes, que ce soit des activistes, que ce soit des gens qui ont œuvré pour un meilleur Afghanistan, qui sont maintenant vulnérables avec les talibans qui ont pris le contrôle du pays. Nous allons continuer de faire tout ce qu'on peut pour ramener les gens ici le plus vite possible, mais nous reconnaissons que la situation est extrêmement difficile et c'est pour ça que nous travaillons avec nos alliés dans la région et à travers le monde pour offrir le plus d'aide possible à tous ceux qui veulent venir au Canada.
Global News en suivi.
On military sexual misconduct, with General Fortin in court this morning and General Vance also facing a charge of obstruction of justice, I have heard repeatedly from the victims of military sexual misconduct that they're dissatisfied with the government's handling of allowing the military police and military prosecutors to make decisions about how these cases are handled. The case of Hayden Edmondson, as well as the case of Art MacDonald, not handed to civilian authorities, despite the fact in Admiral MacDonald's case you had the military police investigating the head of the military, which many police forces, as Minister Sajjan would say, would consider that to be a conflict of interest. You also have the Fish report from Justice Fish saying that these cases should be handed over, but the military is telling me it's actually military prosecutors and military police who will make the decision on which files get handed over. Why aren't you enforcing the findings and the recommendations you accepted of the Fish report to bring in civilian authorities to investigate these cases?
Mercedes, as you have been doing for many, many months for Canadians and for everyone, you've highlighted exactly the number and the levels of barriers that exist in transforming the culture of the military for the better. The processes that are in place to support survivors are inadequate, have been for a very, very long time. The culture around senior leadership in the military has long been resistant to being properly proactive and leading the way on a culture change that we know is necessary. And that's why, for all the work that we've done over the past years, we know there is much more to do. Every woman and man who chooses to serve in the Canadian Armed Forces deserves to be properly supported and deserves a safe working environment. That has simply not been the case for far too long, which is why we continue to bring forward even more measures to make sure that anyone who serves is properly protected and supported, including with General Carignan's work, with the work that Madame Justice Louise Arbour is going forward on, and all the work that Minister Sajjan continues to do.
Next question.
Mia Rabson from the Canadian Press. The government has decided not to pursue the court case preventing documents on the Winnipeg lab scientists to be released. Some, including the Conservatives, are suggesting this is just more attempts to hide the truth. Why not see the case through and let the courts decide whether parliamentary privilege should take precedence?
This was a decision made by the Department of Justice officials.
Following up.
And also, I know you answered this in French, but I'm just hoping you can get you on the Nova Scotia election in English, what your reaction is to it, and if it says anything to you about your own campaign.
I think I was pleased to be able to congratulate Premier-designate Houston this morning and talk about the work that I look forward to doing with him on childcare, on healthcare, on so many issues that matter to Nova Scotians and indeed to all Canadians. I think what we saw is that election campaigns are an important moment for citizens to choose what direction they want their country, their communities to take. That's why here at in this federal election, the choices are so incredibly important for Canadians. Do we get to see the Conservatives take Canada back, or do we move forward for everyone? Do we invest in childcare spaces that are quality and affordable right across the country? Conservatives won't do that. They'll actually reverse those changes. Conservatives actually want to make assault weapons legal again after over a year ago we made it impossible to buy, sell, or give or use assault weapons in this country. They want to reduce our ambitions on the fight against climate change when we know as much as we have done, we have to do even more to fight climate change. And on the pandemic, we've been unequivocal. We need to move forward and get people vaccinated and get through this pandemic by being there for each other as we have from the very beginning. And that's what we're going to continue to do. But that choice really matters. And what we saw in Nova Scotia really highlights that.
Next question.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Theodore Gitis, Bloomberg News. Mr. O'Toole this morning made an issue of the inflation numbers that came in at 3.7%, which is one of the highest in the past 20 years. He called it a cost of living crisis. Wondering if you'd like to respond or have any comment on the numbers themselves, or whether you can tell us what you could do about it.
First of all, we fully respect the Bank of Canada's role in setting monetary policy, so we won't comment directly on that. But I will say that in terms of cost of living, I don't think Aaron O'Toole can be considered serious when he's turning his back on getting women into the workforce by investing in proper childcare. We've signed historic agreements, including right here in BC, to ensure that Canadians see their childcare costs cut in half over the next year, down to $10 a day within 5 years. That's going to make a huge difference, not just in the lives of families, but in the well-being of our businesses and our economy. And the fact that Aaron O'Toole doesn't get that is yet another example of the fact that the Conservatives are stuck in a Harper version of solutions to problems that simply don't work. Canada has moved forward since then. We know that having people's backs through this pandemic, as opposed to cutting services for people like the Conservatives tried to get us to do, was not just the best way to support people through this challenge, but also to ensure that we came back quicker and stronger than ever before. So again, the choice that Canadians get to make in this election are very, very clear. Do Conservatives take Canada back, or do we move forward for everyone?
Following up.
You mentioned the Bank of Canada's mandate. That mandate is actually expiring at the end of this year. If re-elected, it's probably the review or the extension of the mandate is probably the first big economic policy decision you'd make after the election. There's some talk of allowing the Bank of Canada to make some tweaks to the mandate to give it a little bit more flexibility to tolerate higher inflation, so it could, help stimulate the economy a little bit more in this very difficult time. Do you have a position on the mandate? Would you support a slightly higher tolerance for inflation?
I don't know. When I think about the biggest, most important economic policy this government, if re-elected, would move forward, you'll forgive me if I don't think about monetary policy. You'll understand that I think about families. When we first got elected in 2015, the very first thing we did was raise taxes on the wealthiest 1% so we could lower them for the middle class. And similarly, a re-elected Liberal government will continue to invest in supports for families, for students, for seniors, investing in housing, because we know it is not right that so many people right here in the Lower Mainland and indeed across the country can't afford their first home. We know these are the policies that make a difference in the growth of our country and the jobs people get and the opportunities people have to grow and prosper. That is what we will stay focused on.
You will take one last question.
Hi, Mr. Trudeau. This is Parmeet from Red FM Vancouver. My question is regarding the increasing gang violence activity in Lower Mainland area. As a concerned citizen, I am very concerned about this issue. Actually, people are not feeling safe in their home anymore, maybe in the parks or the street as well. My question is what your government is planning to eradicate this situation or to control this situation.
Thank you very much for the question. It's always good to see Red FM out and asking tough questions. You can't visit Surrey, you can't be anywhere in the Lower Mainland or indeed across the country without hearing people concerned about community safety. And that is why we are committed to continuing to strengthen gun control when the Conservatives are committed to weakening gun control. And it's right there on page 90 of the Conservative platform that they will repeal the measures that made assault weapons illegal to own, to use, to buy in this country. It's inconceivable that at a time where Canadians are concerned about gun violence, Erin O'Toole is pandering to the gun lobby and is going to make assault weapons legal again. On top of our ban on assault weapons, we're moving forward giving communities and cities the power to ban handguns. We're continuing to strengthen our measures at the borders to interdict the importation of illegal guns and greater consequences and background checks to ensure that guns don't end up in the hands of criminals. But at the same time, we've been there to invest in community support programs, in community safety programs, in young people in communities, and being there to act concretely to make our communities safer, because that's what Canadians want. They want safer communities, not more rights for gun owners to buy AR-15s and the like.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Trudeau. C'est ce qui met fin à la conférence de presse aujourd'hui.